शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। सिन्दूरारुणविग्रहां त्रिनयनां माणिक्यमौलिस्फुरत्तारानायकशेखरां स्मितमुखीमापीनवक्षोरुहां पाणिभ्यां मलिपूर्णरत्नचषकं रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं सौम्यां रत्नघटस्थरक्तचरणां ध्यायेत् परामम्बिकाम्। ध्यायेन्नित्यं महेशं रजतगिरिनिभं चारुचन्द्रावतंसं रत्नाकल्पोज्ज्वलाङ्गं परशुमृगवराभीतिहस्तं प्रसन्नं पद्मासीनं समन्तात् स्तुतममरगणैः व्याघ्रकृत्तिं वसानं विश्वाद्यं विश्वबीजं निखिलभयहरं पञ्चवक्त्रं विनीतम्। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्ससुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। We do our recitation. So, धृतराष्ट्र उवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामका पाण्डवाश्चैव किमकुर्वत सञ्जय। श्रीभगवानुवाच क्लैब्यं मास्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्त्वोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप। अशोच्यान् अन्वशोचस्त्वं प्रज्ञावादांश्च भाषसे गतासून् अगतासूंश्च नानुशोचन्ति पण्डिताः। न त्वेवाहं जातुलासं न त्वं नेमे जनाधिपाः न चैव च भविष्यामः सर्वे वयमतः परम्। देहिनोऽस्मिन् यथा देहे कौमारं यौवनं जरा तथा देहान्तरप्राप्तिः धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यति। मात्रा स्पर्शास्तु कौन्तेय शीतोष्णसुखदुःखदा आगमापायिनो अनित्याः तां स्थितिक्षस्व भारत। अविनाशि तु तद्विद्धि येन सर्वमिदं ततं vinasham avyayasya na kaschit kartumarhati antavanta ime dehaha nityasyukta sharirinaha anashilo aprameyasya tasmadyudhyasva bharata yenam veti hantaram yaschainam manyate hatam ubhau tau na vijanito nayam hanti na hanyate na jayate mriyate va kadapi nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyah ajo nitya shashvato yam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire vasansi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grihnati naroparani तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णान् अन्यानि संयाति नवानि देहि. It did not come to 1223, right? Yeah. So, very good. Not only till 1222. Okay. So, can we? Yes. Yes, I think there is one. Thank you. Let's see if I can get this. Is it a bit short? Maybe it's on this side. Still hunting. Ah, yes, I think I need internet. You're right.
Arise both initially capitals. Without.
That's what I'm saying.
Online.
It is still reading.
Pretty good.
Yes.
Been trying to bug him, so I need to put it
Now it is
way over there. I made him try.
perfect. Thank you. So, where did we leave this last time? Actually, there has to be a way to also turn off these notifications. I think you go to that. Oh, well, this will be a lost cause. Apparently, I don't know how to do this.
Shall I assist you?
Yes. Always grateful for assistance. It's an old Mac, and I'm older than the Mac.
What is this?
Okay, maybe we'll just leave it.
Yes, I think it will not disturb.
Yeah. Oh,
Go back.
it
Where was
seems to.
it?
It's on. Yeah. Oh, something.
Exit.
3 fingers.
Okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
That's okay. We'll just reopen
Don't
it.
kill it. Okay, I'll try it myself. It's an old Mac. Okay, we have. That's right.
I think it's already open.
Ah, okay. That's why it strings the other. Okay. So where were we last time? I sent you all. I don't know how many of you are enrolled in Google Classroom, but I sent you a message on October 14th. Today is October 26th. Yeah. So that was probably a little. I trust everyone had an enjoyable weekend. I received and reviewed 5 responses to the first assignment, and they were all uniformly excellent. Based on this, wisdom dictates that this is the right time to conclude our introduction to Bhagavad Gita class. It has been truly enjoyable to serve you all in response to some of your requests for a Gita class and to share a perspective on the glorious Gita with everyone. You have all got some introduction to the Gita through this class, which may be useful in time to come. And then thanks to the residents of Vivekananda House for making their home available, etc. And I said alternative arrangements will be made to serve the needs of the respondents. So key point is there were 5 responses. There were about 23 people enrolled in the classroom. And I'm just curious, 5 out of 22 is, how much is 5 out of 22, Shailu? How much is 5 divided by 22? Hey, let's do it together. It's between, if it was 5 divided by 25, can you do it? 1 in 5 is 20%, right? Okay, if it was 20, 25. So somewhere between 20 and 25%, right? Okay. So in classes that I teach at the university, when I get the students have to turn in an evaluation form at the end of the class, and they turn in about 40 to 50%, right? Okay. So what I'm curious is, I thought that it was very low, and so I think there are two possibilities for this. One is that the teacher is not inspiring and engaging the students, right? Or the students are not engaged for whatever other reason, right? So in any case, the outcome is the same, right? Okay. So that's why I said that we can do this probably at another time or in another way, because that was at least my thinking at the time, right? And so my question is, maybe sometimes the class is auto shrinking to those who find it interesting and engaging, right? I think we have about around the number that responded now. But then meanwhile, I also got a nice input that it's useful to continue, maybe there's some utility in continuing, right? So we are going to continue, at least we'll see how it goes here on. But any thoughts on, is it worth engaging, not worth engaging?
I think it's worth it. I was one of the people who did not respond.
Okay.
Simply because it was not on my radar to go check that there's homework.
Right.
So that's my excuse.
Okay.
So in my view, I think it's useful to continue.
Right.
For me, it's more valuable to have that discourse, have that discussion, have that feedback here.
I know.
Right. So that's just me. Just
Yeah.
the way my life works at this particular point in time. So it just didn't occur to me to go home and check for homework and do that. So, but that aside, I think it is helpful. We honestly live in the middle of the Midwest. We don't have too much opportunity to engage in a group that talks about these things.
Right.
So in that sense, I think for our community, I feel, and for me personally, I feel it to be valuable.
Great. Yeah.
Otherwise, there is no touch point on these things.
Right.
There are multiple touch points or other things related to our culture, which veers much more on the entertainment side.
Right.
But this kind of spiritual discussion, there's not much. So to me, it's valuable.
Sure. And I appreciated that. I think that was useful feedback to get, right? The point about so I appreciate that. What happens though is if we only meet once a week, then the certain continuity can be lost, right? Because there has to be some repetition or refreshing of the mind to these things, right? So once a week can be too long, for one thing. Second thing is that although we're doing this live and there's a value to that, as such, if one just reads the verses and reads the translation, that's available in a multitude of places, right? You can go online and click. There are 15 different probably speakers who may speak more articulately. So what is unique is what impact does that have on the individual in that particular setting, right? So the whole point is the two-way feedback. So when you go and read it online, that person is not aware of what your thinking is. And so there is no engagement in that sense. So I think this engagement is very important, personally. And I am fully aware that everyone is very busy. And I know many of you personally. I know it's not easy. There are people at different stages, very actively engaged in different aspects of public life, work. But that so my suggestion is as follows. We'll come to that a little later. Let's say 10 minutes a day. Is 10 minutes a day a lot to set aside?
So I know I won't take. If I may say, if I know ahead of time that there is going to be
a commitment
out of the class to be done,
right?
I think I would have approached it differently. I just did not expect it at all, and therefore it wasn't even on my radar. That's what I'm trying to say. So if we know that moving forward there is going to be some out of the classroom type of work, then
it'll be clear.
We'll have to, at least me, I'll have to work that into my.
Certainly.
So that's just my weak excuse at this point.
No. That's fine. I think there was some communication issues. Some people also didn't log into classroom at all. They were not aware of the communication going through classroom. So we can definitely fix that. But I think that's the purpose of the sort of interaction, is that there will be some small assignments. And the idea is when you go back and think about these assignments, it'll be a lot of fun both for you, hopefully, and for the whole class. I will discuss some of those points now. So I think that clarifies. So it is not meant to be an onerous requirement, but it's meant to be a something that will help you along the way. So, at least maybe once, okay, even if you don't set aside 10 minutes every day, let's say you set aside half an hour once a week. It depends on how fast you're able to go through it, also how much time you have. It's an opportunity between the two meetings to reflect at least once and sort of see what's going on. Check in with yourself, right? That's the idea. So let's go and look at what that, it has gone to sleep. No, that's fine. So this was the assignment. So let's go through that. What connections did you make from the wide range of topics we covered in week 4 and the Gita text and topics? List at least the top few connections you made, and there was a long list given. Some of these topics were, etc. And then the second one was, what do you think was the overarching intent of the review of Islam and Christianity, and what do you think prompted this? Go back to week 3 for this. So actually the assignment itself came out of discussing with some of you in between the 2 classes. So I was talking to someone, they said, well, maybe everyone is not quite making the connection. So I said, no problem, we'll find out if people are making the connection or not. And I'm just going to go through the next one was, I think it slowed down a lot. The next one was, what did you make of the pariksha? Was your response appropriate in retrospect, or would you change your response had you known earlier what it was that was being asked? This is it's like a personality test, all right? As I said, there are no right or wrong answers. But looking at these things closely, you can learn something about yourself. Are you now willing to give what is asked, or do you still have reservations? Or do you still not understand clearly what is being asked? This is also interesting, I think. So anyway, and then are you comfortable with the definition of Sanatana Dharma given in class, or do you disagree with it? And then given that no one came up with a definition so far, what merit does your disagreement have? So, and here's the definition of Sanatana Dharma, is a way of living in harmony and accordance with the natural law, Rita, which is a reflection of the eternal truth that is expressed in the Veda and that manifests as the natural world. So that was given there. So let's go and see the answers to the first question. I think you'll find, if you read these, I think you will all get inspired to maybe respond next time. And the other thing is I've anonymized them. So they're in some random order. I've just picked selections from what everyone has written. So when you read through them, one is not necessarily following the other. Okay? They may be in some random order. So one person said, in the handout of shlokas provided in the Gita class, the verses encompass Shakespeare's thoughts, and so much more that the glimpse of truth in Shakespeare's work itself looks true and limited at the same time. So that was interesting, right? So we went through that, all the world's a stage, right? So I like to think that, yes, there is a truth and it's also limited. Guru Tegh Bahadur's resistance towards conversion made me think that I should also have such paurusham and sankalpam towards Sanatana Dharma. That was interesting. Actually, more than for you guys, it's very interesting for me to read the responses. I think it's very nice. One person wrote, although every time when I used to think about Islam, always negative thoughts used to come to my mind. After knowing the exact meaning of the word Islam, surrender, some of the misconceptions about the religion has gone from the mind and also changed my thinking on how I should conceive and perceive different religions. It made me sad and a little bit angry after hearing how profound Western scholars were publicizing wrongly about the Bhagavad Gita. Accurate? I didn't see. Here was a nice, so if you had only 2 minutes in the day, this was the concise answer. I'm afraid my telephone is going off. I have to learn how to turn notifications off everywhere. And I think I know how to do it on this phone. Off, off, off. Okay. So this was a nice, concise response. Shakespeare's literature, Isha Upanishad, Einstein's theory, prana movement, mechanism about formation of memories. So someone who is very efficient. I liked it. Okay. And then the importance of reading scriptures in the original text instead of relying on translations because message gets lost or modified during translation. There are many examples where weak-minded people get easily swayed because they do not have faith in their religion. And there are examples like Guru Tegh Bahadur, who, because of his strong conviction, refused to convert to a different religion. Connecting the above 2 points, our scriptures already contain a wealth of information and in different forms about every aspect of human life. It tells us who we really are and what the purpose of human life is. Oh, that was very nice. So as a Hindu, we should have strong faith in our scripture, which paves the way for our liberation, also makes our mind strong so as to not get easily swayed. By and large, I feel that the tools and terminologies used in the Gita are much more comprehensive and applicable to diverse aspects of life, unlike the tools of science, which can only be used in a limited framework. While in your presentation, you explored examples from the different streams, such as literature, science, psychology, religion, etc., the Gita itself cannot be put in any one of these categories. At the same time, it encompasses all of these categories. For instance, it is highly valued as a literary masterpiece. That made me think about how our ancestors perceived knowledge in a unified way. Guru Tegh Bahadur, being a prime example of the ultimate sacrifice, while the likes of Zakir Naik, etc., taught us the importance of the protection and preservation of our sacred texts in its purest form by providing us eye-opening examples of the havoc that can be created if one fails to protect the sacred knowledge from misinterpretation. So in Bhagavad Gita, so far we have covered until Shloka 222, where Sri Krishna is stating the secret of Atman. The body goes through various changes and six transformations, and also changes body, same way a human changes clothes. But the Atman doesn't really die or change, and thus it can neither get killed or kill. Therefore, the wise, Dhira, do not get deluded with this, and the following connections are made in this regard. Shakespeare wrote very beautifully how the body transforms from over time and goes into oblivion. It was a very poetic way of expressing the truth, However, our Hindu darshan goes even further, stating that because of this, the dhira doesn't get diluted with the body and its transient nature. The notion of time is a construct of mind. In my understanding, the reason it was brought into the discussion is to challenge the very notion of reality we have, which we consider as an absolute phenomenon due to our day-to-day worldly experience. In that notion of reality, we perceive time plays an important role. It acts as a thread that holds everything together. Thus, the discussion on time, Einstein's notion of space-time, and what was that? Laser interferometry gravitational observatory. Amnesia, Henry Molaison, formation of memory and sleep were in this regard. So what is nice for me to hear is in everyone's own words. I do not put these words into your mouth, but thank God. Okay, but it's very actually new and different to hear this. We discussed Islam and Christianity. There have been seers in all traditions, and they did realize the same absolute truth. However, once the experience was transmitted to the followers, it was drastically different. At the very core, in order to excel in my spiritual practice, I need to have strong conviction in my path. Thus, having a generic opinion about my faith will not help in my practice. It was also intended to ensure that we realize the importance of the Bhagavad Gita in this context. This was very interesting. I personally think sometimes we practice our rituals out of fear of something bad happening or seeking good luck, but lack of understanding and authenticity in our practices. I edited a little bit here, just the wording. With our generation, it kind of worked to keep up with the practices, but with the younger generation, and especially in this country, it won't work. What do you say, Shailu? He's only able to see the screen cos theta. That's so they need reasoning and logic behind everything that they do. If you think deep and relate, all our practices have a scientific reasoning. There are tons of examples like the ones you mentioned about memory and our upvas. And then this person has given some different examples. Okay, so that was interesting. Unfortunately, there is a lot of hesitation in people to accept that they practice Hinduism. My reflection on this is sadly, a lot of people have a feeling that if we practice Hinduism or religion, we are not open-minded and modern. I was asked back in India itself by so many people that how come I practice our rituals when I'm doing research on science? But in other religions, they are very proud of their religion. Once we understand the actual texts and practices properly, we'll definitely be proud of our practices. I really like, this is another person, like one topic from Chandogya Upanishad, the mind is the self, the mind is the world, the mind is Brahman, worship the mind. The way we think reflects what we do, and also behavior is driven by mind. People read us based on our behavior, the way in which we act or conduct ourselves, especially towards others, and mind and karma goes together. So that was the set of reflections on question 1. Don't you think that was pretty interesting? I thought it was. First thing is it drew out several threads which were not even articulated in the class directly. So I think that kind of dialogue is very useful because it starts seeing what you find interesting, valuable, what is the main point. And even Shailu can take a shot at it. Yeah, next time. What do you say? Yeah. You should feel, and it does. You can spend as much time or as little time as you want on it, as the bulleted response showed, right? So, what about question? The second question: what do you think was the overarching intent of the review of Islam and Christianity? What do you think prompted this? So, the intent behind the review of Islam and Christianity, one response, was to clarify to students about the faith system behind these religions. Any Christian or Muslim has a firm belief in their religion. They have a poison pill. That is, in order to be able to call themselves Christians, they must accept that Jesus is the Son of God. And similarly for Muslims, they must accept that Allah is the only God and their prophet is Muhammad. But Hindus do not seem to know the analogy in their religion. They do not seem to know the answers to basic questions like, who is a Hindu or what is Hinduism? Another response made me think how profound our Sanatana Dharma is and the freedom we have with proper guidance and guidelines. Another response, the ultimate truth is available to everyone. Religions are not the truth themselves, but may serve as guidebooks to understanding it. The truth does not demand driving goals like forceful religious conversions, which do nothing to help realize the ultimate reality. So, again, some, I thought, interesting perspectives. Then this one was, the third one was, what do you make of the pariksha? If you remember, the pariksha was, I was going to ask you something without telling you what it was. And the point was, are you willing to give what I asked without knowing what I've told you, what it is, right? Then we went over some interesting examples from the Puranic literature, right? And Itihas. Dasharatha gave Kaikeyi a boon. Then when Vishwamitra came, he also had to promise to give anything. And then there were many others. We talked about Harishchandra's gift to, again, Vishwamitra took from him, came in a disguise as a Brahmin. And what was the other one? Mahabali and Vamana Avatar, right? So the question here, as I said, there is no right response. And I clarified to you why there's no right response. But the point is, after you knew what was asked, would you change your response? Was the question, right? And then also to ask, are you willing actually to give what is asked, or do you still have reservations? Now, this is a little bit perhaps not so important for this group, because obviously you're coming to the meetings, but it's something that is actually important for the very large, broad number of people who are born in Hindu families and yet are not sure that they're Hindus. Birth does not guarantee anything, or it should not, right? You have to own up to it. But unless as a community people ask this question of themselves, it's not going to have a transformation, right? So these were, after listening to the examples of Pope John Paul and Wendy Doniger, it became clear how things can be misrepresented and how violence occurs in the name of religion. I like that. It's a spiritual violence. How I have faith in our scriptures, so I would still give what was asked of me and not change my response in retrospect. Commitment to protect our own religion and scriptures, and commitment to not misrepresent and not spread violence, is not too much to ask from any person following that religion. I highlighted that. So yes, I'm willing to give what is asked. This is the whole point. It is not a big ask. Right? So here I'll share an anecdote with you. So how does our tradition work? Okay, and this is a story from only this last generation, not our generation, but our parents' generation. So there was a person well known to me, grew up in North India, and he was born in a Hindu family, very devout, and he was a devout Shiva Bhakt. So he first went to a Swami or Guru, and that Swami told him that first you must do upasana of Shiva, so worship of Shiva. And so he was given a Shivling, and he had to do daily worship. And this procedure of the worship is very strict. The Shivling actually should never touch the ground also, the way it is his instruction of mode of worship. And so he had to travel. He was in the Indian Administrative Service, IAS, right? So a very obviously intelligent and accomplished person, but he had to travel abroad sometimes. So he would put this Shivling in its special cloth, in a backpack, never let it touch the ground, go everywhere and do that upasana, year after year after year. Okay, all right. So at the end of it, he went back to the Swami, Guru. Actually, this Swami's name was Kutasthanan, and I've been to Kutasthanan's ashram, not far from Chandigarh. Very divine place. So then Guru Kutasthanan asked him, well, okay, you have done the upasana, very good. So then this person said, will you please give me mantra diksha now? Right? So Swami Kutasthanan said, yes, that is possible, but yet you must prove yourself a little more. He said, do you consume alcohol? He said, I don't normally, but having been to the IAS and the IAS Academy, sometimes there are functions where it is offered, retirement parties, and occasionally, maybe once or twice a year. So he said, okay, very good. When you have been able to stay away from alcohol for 1 year, then come back to me. So this gentleman went back, continued his upasana, went back to Guruji. He used to visit him regularly. So again, 1 year had passed. So Swami Kutasana, so how was the year before? Did you follow? He said, I followed 364 days. One day, very close friends, retirement reception, they said, please have a drop of champagne. I took just to please them. He said, oh, very good. Try again for 1 year and come back. You see what I'm trying to say, right? This is the tradition which prepares us for that you're going to study, right? So when I'm saying what is the ask, right? All that is asked of you is trivial. All you're asked is to say, I will not denigrate this and I will protect the Sanatana Dharma and Vedanta. There's nothing to ask. People have asked for much more. So what amuses me is there was a big group that came when we started this. But the moment these kind of questions come, it did quickly dwindled into the few that are left now, right? So this is not a big ask. And that's why the person who said it's not a big ask is right. It is not a big ask, right? This is a very trivial ask. Bigger things are asked down the line. So anyway, that was, I thought, an interesting anecdote. And and to give you the continuation, he did abstain for 1 year and obtained the Mantra Diksha and continued. And then at that point, he was instructed to, he need not do the Upasana anymore. He was at that point a Kritopasaka. And so now he could do purely what they call Manasik Jap and things like that. So it's a procedure. So then what is this? This is more responses. Right? Can I go back? Something happened here. Okay. Yes. So then this was one. My response before knowing the question was an unconditional yes, because I know my guru would ask me something that would only further the right cause. If I would have known the question before, it would not have changed my answer. I would only thought about means to achieve what is being asked beforehand. Then another, yes, I'm willing to give what is being asked because of my guru's teachings. It is now solidified in my mind that to protect the values of Sanatana Dharma is to prevent it from misrepresentation. There are plenty of examples that show what can go wrong to the point when individuals like Zakir Naik and Wendy Doniger, etc., create distorted yet widely popular narratives just because there is an absence of any representation by the heirs and inheritors of the Sanatana Dharma. There are also examples like Guru Tegh Bahadur, who stood to protect Dharma even at the cost of his life. Then another one, yes, I do understand what is being asked, and with my full conscious mind, I'm willing to protect Sanatana Dharma and Ved Puran with the best of my ability. And of course, this is understandable that it's to one's understanding, right? Another person. We do not have any reservations. We are always proud of our religion and will be. We are and will try to understand some of our texts with our best abilities and promise not to misinterpret and spread the wrong message. My response was absolutely in alignment with what you're expecting from us. I would have never changed my response even if I'd known the question before. I think without even being direct, the Pariksha taught us many subtle concepts of the Hindu knowledge tradition and how to be a true Vidyarthi. My response came directly from the heart. I'm grateful to be a student and didn't have any second thoughts about my answer. I clearly understood what was being asked, and at the bottom of my heart, I adhere to that. I have immense Shraddha on Dharma, and I feel humbled and satisfied if I'd be able to perform my Swadharma towards the Sanatana Dharma and our civilization. So, I will stick to my initial response of the Pariksha. However, my reasons were beyond the discussions of this class. I have strong conviction that whatever professor will ask of me is definitely for my betterment and spiritual growth. Thus, my response, unconditional acceptance, will not change. Having said that, I still need to understand what is asked of me and what I'm going to do about it. This has a twofold meaning. Protect the Sanatana Dharma and Vedmata for myself. That irrespective of the circumstances, the worldly obstacles, the questions and challenges I face, I must adhere strongly to Dharma and its practices. That's the very first step of protection. Second and more intended meaning is protection of Dharma and Vedmata in the worldly sense. That has a twofold approach. First, educate and strengthen the faith of Hindus as individuals in society. For this, I have to see how in long term as a life goal, I can contribute in a continual process to strengthen the faith of my fellow brethren. I don't want to commit to a hasty and momentary cause, but rather work for a systematic change which can set processes for this. Secondly, dealing with outside challenges, attempts to malign Sanatana Dharma. This is another. After listening to the examples of Pope John Paul and Wendy Doniger, it became clear how things can be misrepresented and how violence occurs in the name of religion. I have faith in our scriptures, so I would still give what was asked of me and not change my response in retrospect. And that's, I think, a repeat of what. Now, that's not the only response that I expect. So when we have a class like this, I would be totally okay if somebody said, I'm a Hindu, I think you're a pompous, bombastic fool, and I don't agree with your idea of Sanatana Dharma. I think it's tyrannical to expect me to follow it. I'll find the truth for myself and storm out of here. I would have respect for that person. I'd have respect for that person. Because that shows some guts. At least you're responding to it. But to just, be in like a lukewarm, this is not the way, right? Either come full, jump in, or fight to the full. Say you're an idiot and find the truth for yourself, right? This halfway stuff is kaya, cowardly. Really, think about it, right?
Daurbalyam.
Huh? Yeah, exactly. That is that Daurbalyam. The thing is, react and either commit or fight on your own, right? That's fine. There's nothing that is the Upanishadic tradition. Nobody says that you have to accept. This has to be voluntary. If it's voluntary, great. If it's not, do your own thing, right? But very large number I find, right? That's where I'm saying, yes, once a week is fine, but once a week also react, right? We must react. So that's the point. I would be totally fine with it. It's not the first time that somebody has called me a fool. May not be the last either, right? That's okay. So in terms of this definition, right? So what did we see here? So I'll show you some responses, and then I'll give you, from time to time, I also prod you to say what will be an excellent question, right? Remember this? Sometimes I say the first 4 weeks, I said, this is an excellent question you should have asked. So let's see. One person said, yes, I think this definition is appropriate and gives a basic understanding about Sanatana Dharma. I like the second point too. I think Sanatana Dharma is very difficult to explain in 1 or 2 lines because of its evolution from thousands of years. Fair enough, right? So now here is a question that nobody asked. Okay, let's go back to this. Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism is a way of living in harmony in accordance with the natural law, Rita. An excellent question would have been, so what is Rita? If you had asked that question, then I would have told you this following verse, because there is an important verse that goes with it. So let's listen to it. Ritagum satyam param brahmam purusham krishna pingalam urdhvaretam virupaksham vishvarupaya vainamo namah. Shailu, you remember? Where does this verse come? Ritagum satyam param brahmam purusham krishna pingalam urdhvaretam virupaksham vishvarupaya vainamo namah. You remember it? No? It comes in the Sandhya Vandanam. Daily practice. So the thing that I'm saying is, one must know what the verse means, right? Right? So what does this verse mean? Ritagum satyam. Rita is satya. This natural law is the truth. Param Brahmam. It is also Parabrahman. Right? Purusham. This you can interpret as the cosmic man or the individual man. Both. Human being. Krishna Pingalam. This is a very subtle point. Krishna is black. Okay, but in this context, Krishna means the Ida, the lunar channel. Krishna. Pingalam is the Pingala Nadi, which is the solar channel. Urdhvaretam, upward moving, upward flowing. This upward flowing is the energy moving up through the Sushumna. Right? I told about, in the first week I said, how does the Kundalini Yoga work? Right? Virupaksham. This is a subtle word that is often mistranslated. Virupaksham means the formless eye. Okay? So we say we see, right? We see through these eyes, right? These are the physical eyes. But there is a way of seeing without the eye. That is consciousness, right? Virupaksham. How does a blind person also know? How does a blind person gain knowledge? Without the eye, without the physical eye, right? So there is something deeper than the sense that informs us, that gives us knowledge, right? Virupaksham. Vishwarupa. But the same consciousness is available as the Vishwarup, as the world form, right? And to that, I perform worship. So that word Rita was not inserted out of caprice or out of a whim. It's a very significant word, right? So if I give you a definition, you must react to it. I said in the beginning of the class that the supreme intelligence is in everybody. Did I say that or not? Right? So now how do we demonstrate the supreme intelligence? Through our human intelligence, right? So you have a right to question anything, right? But first question is to respond and clarify what is the meaning, right? So although the second point is right, that it cannot be encapsulated in 2 verses, still I think these 2 lines may tell us a lot if we go and ask the questions, what is Rita, right? Okay, so let me see if I have anything useful after this. Yes, this I will give you as an assignment. It's a very interesting short video. We'll not watch all of it now, but maybe we'll watch some of it, just so you know which one you're.
Namaskaram and greetings to all of you.
This is an advertisement.
Diwali, festival
Yes,
delights.
that also. So this is Swami Chinmayananda, one of us.
Teaching is an art of communicating.
So you can watch the. It's only 3 minutes, is it? Okay. So we can. Let's see what.
The teacher is supposed to know something, and the students are those who have come to him for that special knowledge. Therefore, the students are called Vidyarthi. Vidya, knowledge, Arthi, beggar. We come to our teacher begging for that knowledge. And the teacher communicates that knowledge that he has got and pours it out into your understanding. But knowledge like a cup of tea cannot be passed. It's a very subtle process. The idea that the teacher has got is to be translated in his mind into verbal expression. And then he must verbalize it in the right tone, so that the disturbances created by the sound waves so that it enters through the ears and pierces the middle of oblongata and go behind. It must be said in such a way that it should not be too softly said so that you strain yourself. Nor is it that blabbering, a sound, a bang on your head. You can't understand. And having heard, your mind must again reevaluate what you heard into an idea. And you must grasp, digest, assimilate, and make it your own knowledge. Thus the knowledge in the master. When it has become your knowledge, the communication is complete. The education is successful. The teacher's job is fulfilled.
So he's a very dramatic speaker, very, very fun to watch, full of jokes and very dynamic and yeah, entertaining, right? So, but the point he makes is the last part, which is he says that, and I would add to that, I would say not even educate, I would say react, right? You must disagree too. If something doesn't agree with your understanding, you must poke at it, right? And that's what I'm trying to do. By forcing you to respond, by forcing you to respond to those things, I'm poking at you. I'm going to poke at you till you either give up and go away or you submit, right? Okay. So I'll keep doing it. That's my job. That's teaching, right? I'm going to poke at that inconsistency in you, right? Till you feel uncomfortable and you hate me for it, right? I found this to be a very successful way of teaching. I've been teaching for 20 years now.
Prime example here.
What is that? That's the jolly thing. So anyway, you can go back and respond to the video itself. See what he says. Do you agree? Do you disagree? That's most important. The reaction is most important. It's not that there is a predetermined outcome to the reaction, right? You don't have to agree with everything. You don't have to say yes to everything, but it must come from your heart. Whatever comes, there must be a response. Okay, so here's then following some good feedback from some of you. He said, somebody told me, you teach your classes at the university, anyway only 5 to 10% get it, right? Yeah, even at the university. This is true. I found this to be very true, that 10% will really get it, and yet you continue teaching in any case. So I thought that was good advice. So I said, I will use exactly my teaching principles at university here. Is that okay? So let's see how that works. So ME 123 is Mechanics for Mechanical Engineers, is a class for mechanical engineers. Have you seen this in catalogs? I mean, not this particular course, but we see this, right? In the catalog, we'll say, this course is only for aerospace majors. This course is only for whatever. In time, many of us, if we continue in this country, are going to spend large sums of money to send children to colleges. Almost buying a house, it costs, right? When you go to the college, your child is going to enroll in classes, and they're going to say, this class is for, they will declare a major at some point, most schools. So once you declare the major, they'll say, these classes are open to you, the other classes are not open to you, right? I've never seen anyone hold a dharna outside my office saying, how come you're teaching only for mechanical engineers? You're not teaching architecture, anthropology, all these other people. You are a conservative, right-wing extremist. Huh? How kind of heartless person you are, okay? But if I do this, Srimad Bhagavad Gita class is for those who follow Sanatana Dharma, which is called Hinduism. Okay? If I say this, it creates a lot of trouble. Tell me. Okay? I'm not saying that it should not be taught to others. All I said is, I'm not teaching it to others in this format. Correct? That's all I said. Right? Look at how devious we have made our thinking and our minds. Right? We'll accept something and pay large sums of money for it if it's sanctioned in the outside world.
I think it's the interpretation.
What is the interpretation here?
So the interpretation is mechanical engineering courses,
Right.
or I would think more of higher level courses. Right? There are prerequisites to
Right.
take a course.
Right.
So it is to say that you cannot understand what I'm teaching unless you have this basic knowledge.
That's right.
But that's not how this gets the other part gets interpreted. The other part gets interpreted as you're not capable.
No, but so the exact analogy, why is it unthinkable that in another knowledge system, the same rules don't apply?
It's devaluing something. I think in the case of saying that you cannot learn Bhagavad Gita, it's like saying you're not valuable enough.
But did I say that?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
It's misinterpreted.
That's
the
fine.
problem.
But I think we have to rethink this, right? If we shine a light by showing how we do exactly the same thing in a worldly experience, such as this, there are rules. There are reasons there are rules, right? We understand the rules when we pay the cost of a house and send our children to a particular major, right? But what I'm saying is, how come that same thing gets misinterpreted in another context. I'm just curious. I understand what you're saying, and I think maybe this is a good point to discuss. So, in what ways can that be clarified? This is a useful exercise for the Hindu community as a whole.
You can clarify. If you want to learn this, these are the things that you need to do before.
Right. So and that is also there actually. In the beginning of the class, I did mention something about adhikari, right? We read even in the Gita. And so, and in that, the description of those prerequisites was fairly, does anyone remember what they are?
Vishayam, Adhikari, Sambandham, and purpose. Those were the things that I remember.
Right. But in the Adhikari, we picked one verse from the Gita, and in the last chapter, it said, whom you should not translate.
You must want it, you must be ready to exercise control, and you must respect or acknowledge God. That's
right.
At
least it should not be sent to someone who is not a tapasyaka, na atapasyaka, na abhaktaya, and the one who na abhisuyati, the one who does not denigrate me. Right? These were three things. Now, for every particular knowledge system, there are different requirements. So all I'm saying is that for reasons, rational or not, or otherwise, I find this, I'm just sharing with you, this contrast to me is very puzzling.
So, it's not obvious to me that there is resistance or people get upset or confused if you say what's on the. Is this true? Am I missing something? People are upset that if you say this class is for people who will follow Sanatana Dharma, they get upset.
Yeah. So when we talked about that Islam and other things, there was a response that this is kind of the standard argument trotted out by the extremist Hindu or very right-wing Hindu opinion. And it was not accusing me of it, thank God. But what I'm saying is, why is that perception is worth examining? I'm just saying that on the face value, we have rules and courses at the university.
My perception was that there was some kind of either tension or resistance because we were comparing religions.
Yeah.
Not because we were saying you should do this only because that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
I think some people get uncomfortable when you are trying to compare things, right? Because they have no basis. Maybe they're not. I'll speak for myself.
Right.
I'm not knowledgeable enough to know whether one religion is better than the other.
Right.
Or not, right.
Sure.
So there, I think I myself would feel a form of resistance to get on a pedestal and say my religion is better than yours. Right. So I can understand the discomfort people might have expressed. At least to my brain, that's how it would have resonated.
Right.
I personally didn't think it was related to saying, please continue this class under these conditions. That's what I'm trying to understand. So did you feel that, you see what I'm saying? So it's more about...
That's a good point. Yeah. And this, we're now having a useful discussion. So you're hitting the nail on the head. So let us say I'm born in a Hindu family, right? And I actually have a choice. I can choose to follow Hinduism or I don't have to. Luckily, in our families, nobody really imposes these things, correct? So one of the important things that any Hindu who comes to their faith has to resolve for themselves is, why am I doing this, right? So you will only do something, and I brought this up, if it's better than something else. Why would you follow this path? The question that we have to answer to ourselves is, should I not follow any other path? Why should I follow this path?
This is a good question.
Right?
So in my lifetime, I don't believe anybody has ever provided that kind of an outlook for me to follow.
Right.
This is a fair comment.
Right.
For me. So I did it honestly because something appealed to me naturally. I saw the elders in the family doing it.
Right.
I was taken to temples and there was some sort of connection. I was given Amar Chitra Katha comics to read about a mythology and I found a connection.
Right.
That's how it happened.
Right.
I don't think at any point in time I had some rational discussion or logical discussion to convince me this is a better path than something.
Right.
Right. So.
And what I'm saying is that when we grew up, and that was that somebody had written that in our generation, they were comparing across the generations. For those of us who grew up in India, the predominant religion of exposure and the people around you was only Hinduism. And not a whole lot. There was not really a choice, right? But as people have traveled globalization, coming to other places, there is almost a free choice, right? I mean, there is nothing to say that anyone of the next generation should not come back and say, I see this as a perfectly reasonable path. What's the problem? And I'm not trying to say we should try to brainwash them or convince them. But unless we've worked out those arguments for ourselves, we probably cannot articulate what is good about what we're doing, right? And I think that's a useful exercise. And I gave you a couple of examples. Does anyone remember what they were? So I tried to articulate for you, not saying again that you should buy into it. But as you said, it's probably the first time that such an argument was presented. And what was the argument? Anyone remember?
So ask the question again.
So we said, you raised this point. So there are the choice of various religions. So can we name at least one or two things unique or special about Hinduism and we talked about it in the first 4 weeks.
At one point, especially a little bit controversial, that Shruti and Smriti are different.
Mm-hmm.
So we do, like in Hindu Dharma, the Smriti are not considered as the ultimate authority. They changes with time,
Mm-hmm.
though they have a lot of meaningful things. But comparing to other religions, the Shruti and Smriti are sort of intermixed, and that's why
difficulties are,
We talked about how in comparison to Buddhism, for example, we don't believe in that same idea of nothingness.
Mhm.
But that obviously, we talked about the kind of like cyclical nature of that argument and how it's like, having nothingness doesn't make sense.
as the basis of, right?
To me, what resonates most is it seems to be the easiest way to live in harmony
In harmony.
with anybody else who practices anything else.
Mhm. Yeah.
Which other religions don't.
That's right. So that was the encapsulated in the short verse from Rig Veda. Ekam Sat Bahudha Vipra Vedanti. So the very fundamental understanding that there's not only one way, right? So I think that is useful to articulate. And I'm also saying that we don't have to shy away from having opinions about this, right? For too long, a certain kind of apologist attitude has crept into Hinduism. We're always apologizing for everything, right? And I'm saying there is nothing wrong with being open-minded and liberal and yet not apologizing for one's identity. That's all I'm saying, right? The moment nobody has put this big yoke on you that you should not have an opinion about anything just because you're a Hindu, right? So first form your opinion. For that you have to introspect. For that you have to first know what your Hinduism is. You have to know your Sanatana Dharma, right? So this is the first step. And once you do that, then perhaps we can articulate more clearly. So these were meant to be a guideline. Okay, how do we start with that? Anyway, to me at least, I found this a bit paradoxical and interesting. So I thought I'd share it with you. To me, there is no difference. There is a wisdom in the way that modern educational system is conducted with majors. It reflects the exact same wisdom that was there in ancient knowledge systems, which is that certain things are for some people. If one were to teach an introduction to Hinduism class to a non-major, you would word it differently. Most definitely. You would not word it in the same way. And I don't see what's the big problem with that, right? So, but you may not also cover the same subject matter. The thermodynamics for ME majors is not the same as thermodynamics for non-majors because the emphasis is different. That's all there is to it. Why does the entire baggage of denigration and criticism have to come in? I don't see this at all. It's just very transparently simple, right? So let's go to the next point. This can get a little more interesting, I hope. Okay, so when we start the class, I have to, normally we'll ask who all in this class are mechanical engineering majors, right? If it's a class for ME majors. The class is not for non-ME majors, so those who are not ME majors should leave this class. In fact, do you know that I get an email from my director of undergraduate education, very good friend of mine, who says, please don't sign any ad slips to students because they come in without the prerequisites and they want to add the course. I'm explicitly forbidden every semester from doing this, right? However, in this class, if I ask who calls themselves a follower of Sanatana Dharma, is it okay to say, can I say, if you're not a follower, then this class is not fair and you should leave this class? How will people react? There is pushback. Somehow, half understanding what Hinduism is about, people start saying, this is wrong. My question is, first understand it and then ask, is this right or wrong? Right? Okay. Next question. Sir, I don't know if I'm a mechanical engineering major. Okay, what is the response? Definition of mechanical engineering is posted on the departmental website. Mechanical engineers I don't necessarily agree with this definition, by the way, but anyway, are typically involved with the generation, distribution, use of energy, blah, 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 right? So we have a definition, right? It's posted. What happens on the other side? I said Sanatana Dharma is a way of living. I gave you a definition. Yes or no? Right? You can agree with it, you can disagree with it. But if you don't know what the definition is, here's the definition. Right? Okay, let's continue. Sir, I disagree with the definition of mechanical engineer. Okay, what will you do then?
Give you a definition. And then, like, basically have some points to defend it.
To a point, yes. But suppose the student disagrees with that also.
No, in that analogy, there's an authority structure in place.
Yes, very good. Okay, so let's go. Yes. Go see the chair of the department and discuss with him or her. If dissatisfied, go see the higher official and so on until the provost, right? The provost of the university is the highest. Oh, Sri Ram sees where it's going already. So I disagree. So you can see the chair of my department, who's my guru, Sri Adi Shankaracharya, and discuss with him. If you disagree with him, you can go and ask his guru, God. That's my department.
I don't think that's a good analogy.
Why?
I know how to contact the provost. There's no way I can.
And that's exactly the point. Until actually there is one mistake there, which is you directly do have access to both these people. You do. So either you disagree, that's the strength of the person who walks out of this class and I said, I will find the truth myself, right? Either do that, right? Or provisionally accept the definition and move forward, right?
I completely agree with that. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm still trying to understand the. Maybe it was just my mindset. I did not see any issue with that. So
Right.
I guess I'm just trying to understand what people would have seen an issue. I would have liked to hear from somebody as to what the specific pushback would be when you lay this condition for it. Because see, in my view, this is all in some sense
Obvious.
I don't know if it's obvious.
Mm.
It's voluntary. People
Yeah.
are coming here. You set the conditions of the class. People either like it and they're willing to do it, or they don't. Right. So I'm just trying to understand what the nature of that pushback would be. I think you make a good point that without knowing what the definition, what the foundation is,
Right.
I have no basis to make either an agreement or a disagreement with what you're saying.
Right. So I think if you suppose we take this on the road and discuss with a very large number of Hindus, right? Or let's say very large number of people born in Hindu families, right? You will be surprised as to how many people take serious disagreement with many of these very fundamental and simple points, right? You just have to go online and see some of the discussions that are going on, or articles written by people. Just read the Indian press. You don't have to go very far, right? Open the Hindu and read it. The Hindu, bit of an oxymoron for the paper's name now, but it's interesting to read what their opinions are and how divergent sometimes they are from very simple, basic points. And believe me, I come from this from a perspective where I'm an academic. Educated in the liberal tradition. fully appreciative of the benefits of education system I went through, fully aware of the advantages of having an open-minded liberal approach. All this is true. But I think over my 50 years, I found that as Hindus, we have started apologizing for ridiculous things. I think it's time to stop that. And I think it's time to at least know what we are talking about. Right? Once we know what we're talking about, then we can stop apologizing for the wrong things. That's all I'm saying. Right? Yeah.
So can I get a free degree from this? Because they're going to cost a lot in college.
Yes. So you can get a free degree.
Like,
That's my other question. So this is for free, right? No charge. Right?
Actually, I'm still confusion.
Yes.
I mean, who in this class is? But I guess my first point is if you think people are not qualified to be in this class,
Right.
you can dictate so. I think it should be obeyed. There's no question about that to me.
No. I'm just. So I took a straw poll the other day. I said, raise your hand if you're a Hindu. Did you see the response in the class?
Right. So
It was pathetic. No, I don't want to say so. It was pathetic.
But that's fine.
No, but that's a fact, and that's what I'm trying to
that
say.
can be a fact. I'm just
Right.
saying, as pertinent to this class, and you can put that rule down, right? I mean, if you don't know who you are, you cannot attend this class. That's a fine rule.
No, but I'm saying that more than the rule, I'm saying that it's worthwhile for even people who are on the fence to investigate it. That's all. It's not a question of a rule. Yes, you can have a rule, right? And in some sense, we are self-selecting here, right? But at the same time, the other point that someone raised was there is a twofold approach to this, right? One is how you relate to it, and the other is how do we present ourselves and how do we interact with others in our community, right? That's also a twofold issue. So I'm just making an observation that, and it was resonated in some of the other responses too, that somehow, because of a very open and broad-based and diversity of approaches within Hinduism, there is a reluctance amongst us to at least stand up and say yes.
I don't know if it's reluctance as much as ignorance. That's what I'm coming here to learn something. I think that's my whole point. I don't, at least again for me, right? So I think if I remember right, the question you had asked that is, does anybody know what makes you? I think that's what the question was. And I honestly don't know the answer.
Okay.
Right? My simplest answer would have been, like you were saying, I was born in a Hindu family. I've been told I'm a Hindu, and that's why.
Right.
So I've never had the opportunity to delve deeper into this, and that's the purpose here, right? So at least for me, to delve deeper into that.
Right.
So I and again, I might be ignorant to the examples that you would have experienced, I guess. I don't know if I've been apologetic to anybody for doing certain things related to my religion, etc.
Right.
But if somebody would ask me, tell me, why you're a Hindu, my answer would have been because I was born in, I practice Hinduism because that's what I've been told to do by my family.
That's right.
So to me, it's to even get that platform strong, foundation strong, so I can learn more.
Right. So that's your personal viewpoint, and that's totally fine. That's.
So I guess I'm sharing the question. There's a similar question I'm asking, which is it may be what's the right term? So I don't know. I think whether in this particular group there is any pushback on that aspect. Is all I guess I'm questioning. I guess.
Not a pushback, but it's an observation that I made, that I was very surprised that so many people that there was not an immediate, I mean, this is, right? And as somebody said, I think that in most of the other religions, those who claim that they follow would be a little more forthcoming in saying, yes, that's what I am. They may not know exactly, but they would have a more definite, like they're saying, yes, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Christian, right? I feel there was a big reluctance to just come out and say that.
So I don't know. I don't know if it's a bit generational too. I think growing up where we are in my generation, it can be very uncomfortable to share parts of your culture with the wider world. Like at school and stuff, there are many things. Whereas I know a lot of people in my school who are Catholic and wear like ashram, the ashram stays and stuff, and proclaim their religion and culture a lot more comfortably. I don't know.
So I don't know if that's related to being a Hindu as opposed to being in the minority. That's a different discomfort level that gets in. I agree with that. Right, there are different scenarios for that.
That's right. And for the coming generation, that's exactly another point. For the diaspora, people growing up outside, right? It is different than for those who grew up in India. This we cannot deny. And so for them, probably more importantly, articulation of that is important and worthwhile, right? And unless that's brought out in some sort of a forum, that question never gets asked. Right? There's no reason to ask that question, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't want to start the discussion, but I just wanted to make this point, which might be related. So the right column that we saw, and we are discussing that what are the implications of not taking this as a guideline. So I think major reflection of it can also be seen in the present academia, from where this Penny Dominion and other things that we discussed are coming up. Because I think because we didn't take care of who is Adhikari and who is Vidyarthi or who is eligible to be Vidyarthi.
Mm-hmm.
And I think many people in the present day academia who are known to be the authority of Hinduism are not practicing Hindu,
right?
And that's why they are denigrating Hinduism in the knowledge system in several ways. And I think that's why the ignorance that we are talking about is turning into reluctance.
Yeah.
Because when this Hindu like some things about Hinduism via Western academia comes into our pop culture,
right?
Then the ignorance that we have is now turned into the reluctance.
I think that's a very good analysis. Thank you. Yeah, I think you're very right. So, for instance, any aspect in any world event, whatever, you can spin it in any way. And I think we talked about, I mentioned history can be written in 1,000 ways, right? For the English-speaking Indian and the English-speaking Indian born in a Hindu family, often the way you read about these things is through the literature in English. And that literature in English is not always written by practicing Hindus, right? It is written by people who are observing it as an academic viewpoint. And that is vastly different perspective. And it's often also the perspective of a colonizer, an oppressor, and somebody whose intrinsic intent was to convert the native population to another religion. This has been the underlying agenda if you go back and read from the day the East India Company landed in India. It is a fact. If you go and read the opening essays of the Bowden Professor of Sanskrit, the Bowden Professor of Sanskrit is the highest chair in Oxford in Sanskrit. Monier Williams, who did many good things in terms of compiling a Sanskrit dictionary, set out to learn Sanskrit in order to convert the natives to Christianity. Explicitly stated in his opening speech to the trustees at Oxford. Okay? So let us not be under any illusions that what you're reading out there is written with some necessarily an authentic scholarship attempt, but it was very, very, very loaded, very, very, very clearly directed to achieve an agenda, right? And so, if I then take various aspects of Hinduism and cast them in a certain light, now, what we call Varna Ashrama Dharma, called the caste system, right? Now, there may be different viewpoints on it. No system is perfect, right? Capitalism has its own, you can spin capitalism as you want. You can spin it as a virtue, you can spin it as a whatever. It all depends on the perspective you take. But if predominantly the literature that you read spins it one way, what are the chances that your mind is going to become turned in that way or not? It is a high probability that you're going to start viewing it itself as something to be ashamed of. And it's true. Right? A very large number of people who now write in the Indian press are educated in English, and they've been educated under these kinds of thinking, right? And therefore you see that bias, right? That is not to say that everything that is done is holy and good and right in the Vyavaharika Dharma. In the Vyavaharik empirical world, many things have been done which, if viewed through any lens, would not be conscionable. That's fine. But there is no debating that the slant has been very much critical, denigratory, and I express this anecdotally with people of my generation from the colleges I went to. You know, I'll give you an example. This is straight from one person. We went to somebody's wedding, and the priest there came. He was actually of white ethnicity, and doing the marriage ritual, and he chanted all those mumbo jumbo Sanskrit mantras. Okay. The word mumbo jumbo was coined by Europeans to denigrate anything they could not understand. Okay, it is meant to cast things in a bad light. This is an Indian. This is an Indian born in a Hindu family, educated at one of the top institutions of India and in the world, saying this naturally, just off the cuff. Right? And this is not unique. This is pervasive. This is pervasive, right? I immediately reacted and said, please, even if you cannot celebrate your culture, don't denigrate it. Don't use this word mumbo jumbo. Okay? We have to be sensitive to these things. Because if we are not sensitive and stand up, who is going to do it for us? There may be one David Frawley or Vamdev Shastri who, born in a different Jesuit family, has become one of the deep scholars and writers about, but they're not, you cannot expect your neighbor to fight your battles, right? And it has become, unfortunately, a situation where at least first job, we have to know what we are about, right? And only then can one become sensitive to these things. Right? So anyway, let us at least read one slokam before we continue. And I think we'll sort of intersperse this discussion a little bit so that we can have it over time in case it's of interest. I think it might be of interest. So which one did we, Nainam Chindan? So in this, continuing our Gita discussion, Sri Krishna is talking about the Atma. And he says, why is this Atma from the previous verse? Remember, he talked about Vasansi Jirnani Yathavya. Just as the man puts on fresh clothes after discarding worn out ones, so does the embodied self, discarding worn out bodies, proceed to take up new ones. And so Sri Shankaracharya's Bhashyam says, why qualify the spirit as avikriya or immutable? That leads to the next verse. Nainam chindanti shastrani. This we are going to memorize, by the way. Nainam chindanti shastrani.
Nainam chindanti shastrani.
Nainam dahati pavakaha.
Nainam dahati pavakaha.
Na chainam kledayantyapo.
Na chainam kledayantyapo.
Na shoshayati marutaha.
Na shoshayati marutaha.
So the literal translation is na enam, not indeed this one, chindanti, cut, shastrani, weapons. Na enam, not this one, dahati, burn, pavaka, fire. Na cha, and not this one, enam, kledayanti apo, nor does water wet it. Na shoshayati maruta, nor does the wind dry it. So, this is written to emphasize in Arjuna's mind that particularly since he's going to enter into this war, that the weapon will not cut the true self, real self, in all these kings whom he's seeing there, right? I don't know if we are. Next one is not for memorization, but I will read it. So this one goes, verse 24. Yeah. Achedyo ayam, adahyo ayam, akledyo ashoshya evacha, nityah sarvagatah sthanuhu, achalo ayam sanatana. So the way I read it here, I didn't read it in the verse form. I broke the sandhi so that we can understand a little better. Achedya, that is, this is uncuttable, literally. This self cannot be cut. Adahyo, it cannot be burned. Ashoshya, cannot be wetted. Akledyo, ashoshya. Shoshya is dried, right? So kledyo is wetted or dried. Nityaha, eternal. Sarvagataha, all pervasive. Sthanuhu, stable. Achalaha, immovable. And it is everlasting, sanatana. So this kind of definition is very useful when in meditation the mind examines various things, right? In meditation, the mind is being brought to rest, and as it is brought to rest, is going to examine various things. At every point, if this qualification is applied, then one can ascertain, is this a true self or not? Right? Okay. So the first set of things, cutting, drying, burning, etc., eliminate what aspect of the self? The physical body, right? So it is extremely natural for us to think that the physical body is the self. It's the first superimposition. And I think, I don't know, in one of the classes I said, so the notion of the physical body extends till about the fingertips, right? So beyond this, I don't think this is myself. Isn't that kind of funny, right? But I think this is myself. Is that true? So if somebody pinches here, I don't feel offended. If somebody pinches here, you get a thwack from me, right? I think this is something you should think about every day, right? Isn't that really peculiar? So my sense of self extends just up to here. Okay, very interesting. How did this?
Here too.
Huh?
Here too.
Why?
Somebody pinches you.
No. Yes, no, but that's a good point. Actually, you raise a good point. That's very, very good point. So slowly we start to expand our self sometimes to, this is mine. This is my child. Those are definitely mental attachments that we form. But if you really think about it, it is unfounded. Right. At the end of the day, only you matter. The path of a sadhak is extremely selfish. You shouldn't waste your time with other stuff. Okay? You really should spend your time first, because at the time of departure from the body, okay, who's going to help you? Nobody is going to help you at the time of departure from the body. I'll tell you that. Valmiki, see, beautiful story. Remember Valmiki's story? What happened? He was happily cutting animals and walking around, and the Sapta Rishis came and he said, I'll cut you also, give me your money, I'll rob you, I want to rob you. Then they said, Murkh, go home and ask your wife and children, you've done all these sins, who's going to pay for it? He went and asked his wife and she said, no, of course not, we're not going to pay for your sins. It's your duty to get the money and feed us and cut animals. That's your, if you did it by cutting animals, that's your stupidity. Right? You will be faced with this beautiful and absolutely logical argument from your close family at the time of your passing. And you should. It is right. It is dharma. It is dharma. You have to recognize you're in this on your own, buddy. If you think anything else, you're a fool. No, not at all. Everyone has to do their karma, right? You have to do what you have to do, but you cannot think that as a consequence that anybody is going to help you on that final journey. They cannot help you on that final journey. Only you can help yourself on that final journey. So that is why at this time, earlier in life itself, we must start preparing for that final journey. And that is why I said the art of living is preceded by the knowledge of the science of dying. So if you know what the final journey is going to be, then you will behave in the living journey in a way that demonstrates wisdom, which Sri Krishna is talking about and which Arjuna lacks at that instant. That is the point, right? Again and again, this point will come prayanakali. This is not a cruel statement. It is not a statement of pardon?
Sadism.
Not of sadism. It's not a sadistic statement. It is not an uncaring statement at all. It is not an uncaring statement, but it's a statement of pure fact, which has been repeatedly established by 108 billion humans who have inhabited this earth and gone on. That's the total number of humans. I looked it up. Since the beginning of recorded history that we know, 108 billion human beings have come and left this earthly plane. And each one of them has had to do the last journey on their own. Nobody has gone with that, any person in that last journey, right? So it's good to prepare and know what that journey is going to be. And again, it does not mean that one has to be uncaring, but there is a wisdom in knowing that one is alone in this quest. So, so the main point here is, yes, it's not the body. So then if it is not the body, then what is the self, right? This is the question one seeks to answer in meditation, right? So through, and in the Taittiriya Upanishad, it gives you a guideline. It says there is a Panchakosha. There are 5 sheets to this body, to this jiva, not to the body. One of them is Annamaya Kosha. Then we proceed inwards. What are these other koshas? How are they composed, right? So in this way, through meditation, human being, through yogic practice, can start to examine these sheets, right? And then lead inward. Of course, Sri Krishna is talking straight away about the true self, right away. To clarify, first of all, okay, it is not that Annamaya Kosha, for sure. So with that, I think we'll stop. We are a few minutes over time. Sorry about that. We will say Swasti Mantra and then conclude. Om Tacham Yora Vranimahe Gatum Yajnaya Gatum Yajnapataye Daivihi Swastirastunaham Swastirmanushebhyah Urdhvam Jigatu Bheshajam Shanno Astu Dripadehe Sham Chatushpade Om Shanti Shanti Shanti